Hi everyone, new video today, and I'm going to be talking about a topic suggested to me by an anonymous source, and this kind of goes into something I've already wanted to talk about, which is perfect. So to paraphrase, this person wants me to talk about when adoptive parents are not properly prepared to ensure that their adopted child is safe, comfortable, and in the fact that they do not fit in. And I think this is so important, having adoptive parents prepared for all of the struggles that come with adoption. This really isn't something that I think a lot of parents like to talk about. People like to focus on how the adopted child is now with a loving family, how, they're not an orphan anymore, and they don't really focus on the struggles that come with identity, especially with transracial adoptions, and if the adoptive parents are white, what the kid of color is going to experience. And I don't think a lot of parents prepare themselves for this. I think more are starting to, but there's still such a large number of adoptive parents who not really actively ignore, but they're also not actively seeking out resources to learn. And I think that being aware of your child's potential struggles it's so important. Even if you live in a really diverse area and your kid is going to be with a bunch of other kids that are the same race as them, there are still really mean people in this world, and every person of color has experienced racism or microaggressions at some point in their life. Like, that's just a fact. So it's so important for parents to understand what is going on in the world and how it's going to affect their kid. Now, I'm not saying you need to sit down with your child from day one and have a talk with them like, hey, you're going to experience racism. There are mean people in this world. I'm not saying you need to do that, but I am saying find resources, understand what white fragility is, and understand that there is a severe issue of inequality in this country. I think it was very eye-opening to me when I would talk about the things people would say to me, and then it was never straight out said, oh, well, honestly, that's a racist comment. It was just like, hey, oh, that kid's just being me. They don't understand. They don't know. And in some cases, yeah, the kid's just repeating what they hear, but it is important to understand that people do not consider every race equal and that they're going to say mean things. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to say about this because I'm not an adoptive parent of a transracial adoption, and so I'm trying to figure out what would have been most helpful to me. So my parents were always very supportive, and when I would come to them with issues, we would talk about them, but it was never straight out talked about racism and how, I could have Asian classmates and stuff, but still have other kids saying these mean things to me. I think that really it's just adoptive parents, especially white adoptive parents, have to put in the effort to have the really uncomfortable conversations about racism and microaggressions and why the world is the way it is. I'm going to admit, for a really long time, I was confused about race. We seriously never talked about it, so I had no idea if white equaled American or if I was something else because I was Chinese. It was just so confusing to me. And then I realized, okay, I'm not actually white, but I am American, and I'm also Chinese. Especially being a transracial adoptee, it's so bizarre to, I guess, be growing up in a world experiencing these things and knowing that your adoptive family is not. What's even more important is if your child of color comes to you and talks about this, don't ignore them. Don't turn a blind eye and say, oh no, there's no way that could happen. You're my kid. You're not going to experience racism. I have to say this. just because you didn't experience racism yourself does not mean that your kid of color is not going to experience racism. They are. If they are of color, they're going to experience it at some point. It's just going to happen. It's so sad and depressing to think about, but that is where the world is. So that is probably the worst thing you can do, is when your kid tries to discuss racism and microaggressions and say, you know, someone said this to me about the way my eyes look or the color of my skin. I don't know why they said it. Don't just brush it off and don't make it seem like it's nothing, because it's something. And if kids are constantly taught to just, you know, take the comments and have the stiff upper lip and just ignore it, there's never going to be any progress. People need to speak up about the injustices they experience so we can actually start making a change. I recently found a Facebook group and I got permission to promote it. It's called Transracial Adoption Perspectives. And I cannot recommend this group enough. It is incredible. It is very structured, so you go through an introductory group first so you can learn proper terminology. There are adoptees, adoptive parents, birth families, foster families, and it is such a wide variety. I know my channel is about Chinese adoption, but the diversity in this group is incredible. And there's absolutely no hand-holding. So if you get offended easily, first of all, maybe ask yourself why you get offended so easily. And then secondly, try to have the confidence to just stick around in the conversation long enough to learn something. So a lot of articles are posted, there are a lot of good debates, and just a really healthy flow of information. And so I recently asked my mom and my fiance, who are both white, to join, because I was really struggling with how to explain that, yes, I grew up in a white family, and yes, I'm very fortunate, but I also experienced racism a lot. And even though I'm not, you know, confining myself to my room, afraid to be out in the world, and every time someone says something to me, I'm not breaking down in tears and, oh, how could they say something like that? I don't know. I still experience it and it still bothers me, but I'm coming to a point where now I just call people out for it. Not in a mean way, especially if you're my friend, but if you do say something that's racist or a microaggression, I'm just gonna say, hey, I kind of find that offensive. This is why. Here's a better way that you could say this. I will link that group down below because I have learned so much as a transracial adoptee, and I know that my mom and Adam have learned a lot, are very active administrators and moderators who, first of all, make sure that no one's saying something completely offensive and outrageous, but also they take the time to find helpful resources and set up the conversation. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, are you guilty of white fragility? That kind of thing. So if you want to be part of an active community who's constantly learning how to support the marginalized, join this group, 100%. But back to the original topic, being prepared for transracial adoption is seriously just so important. I mean, it is wonderful that people try to focus on the positive aspects of adoption, but parents absolutely need to be prepared for the struggles that their kids and themselves are going to experience. I mean, I don't think my parents were ready for half of the offensive stuff they were told. And then it wasn't until, what, like a year ago that I started telling them the stuff being said to me. And so my advice would just be always have an open and ongoing conversation. Just because your kid isn't speaking up about it doesn't mean that it's not happening. I know I didn't speak up about it because I was embarrassed. When kids were telling me that, you know, my eyes were chinky, or they were asking me, oh, do your eyes hurt because they're always so slanted? I was like, man, I'm ugly. I don't want people to know that I'm ugly, so I'm just not gonna speak about it. And that was the complete wrong thing to do. And parents, I'm not saying like constantly interrogate your kid, because I know that if my parents ask me a question more than once, I just shut down. I'm like, stop, okay? I don't want to talk about it. But occasional, and I mean occasional, check-in, just, hey, how's life going? Or find an article and say, hey, I just read this. Is this something you experience, or do you experience something similar? I know that's hard to do if your kid's younger, but have an ongoing conversation with your kid, and also just be a part of the conversation going on in the world. Don't ignore the racism and the microaggressions, because it's something that everyone deals with, and then it's especially hard when you're a transracial adoptee experiencing it and you know that your adoptive family is not experiencing it. You don't know who to turn to. You don't know if it's going to be upsetting if you go up to your friend who's of the same race and you say, hey, someone just said this to me. Did they say this to you too? Because you don't want to trigger anyone. You don't want to start anything. I guess the moral of this video is stay woke. Really though, I think it's great that there are so many more diverse celebrities and athletes who are speaking up about injustices going on. And so don't rely on them to help your kid through this. Just be active, read, be a part of conversations, and put yourself in the uncomfortable position. Look in the mirror and say, am I part of the issue? And if I am, how can I fix it? And how can I fix the world for my child of color? Okay, that's the video. I don't know how long this is going to be when I edit it, but hopefully people are still watching towards the end. Like always, you can subscribe for more videos on this side. And if you like this video, like the button, it's a thumbs up. One thing that's completely unrelated is in a lot of the groups, especially of Asian adoptees, I see adoptive parents saying, hey, my young girl wants their hair curled, but I don't know, every time I do it, it falls, or her hair is so straight, it just doesn't work. And I have found a pretty good method, so if that's something you want to learn, just comment below and I can do like a quick tutorial video, because I don't know. I know when I was younger, I always wanted curly hair, and I really couldn't figure it out on my own. So yeah, comment below for that, and I'm not sure when I'll be posting my next video, but stay tuned. I'm hoping it'll be in the next 2 weeks-ish. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.